Hello, my name is Ben DeVries and I am a junior in the BCS major. Today we're going to be taking a look at MDM and MAM with Microsoft Intune. To get started, we have two acronyms in that title that both have to do with managing devices and applications. MDM is Mobile Device Management, and according to the Wikipedia page for that, it is the management of mobile devices such as smartphones, tablet computers, and laptops. Essentially, the workplace is shifting away from traditional desktop computers that are wired into an Ethernet that are connected to a domain, and we need some way to manage that flexible infrastructure. This is different than that traditional enterprise management where you have desktop computers connected to a domain and you can apply policies on that domain, but it can be used hand in hand with that, and they can supplement each other. Mobile application management is the provisioning and controlling access to internally developed and commercially available mobile apps. So this is abstracted a level from device management to where you can now manage application use and access on devices that you yourself do not manage. Microsoft Intune is a product that Microsoft has put out, of course. It is a cloud-based solution for MDM and MAM. It integrates with Azure AD for managing user accounts and access, so that works very similar to using a local Active Directory. It can be run alongside Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which is a traditional enterprise management software for co-managed devices. So you can use some functionality of Endpoint Manager, some functionality of Intune, and run them together. Intune allows for both enterprise-owned devices as well as employee-provided devices, which you may hear BYOD, or bring your own device. That is becoming more and more common, especially in smaller startup workplaces where you just want your employees to bring their own stuff, and that way you don't have to provide it for them. Intune works with Windows, Mac OS, Android, as well as iOS and iPad OS. So as you can see, pretty much every device you could imagine will work with your Intune environment. For this project, I focused mainly on the small business implementation of Intune, which is kind of the general theme of this class. If you were a sysadmin for a small business, how would you handle things? So I looked at Windows 10 and Android management. iOS may have been a good thing to look at as well, but I didn't have access to an iOS device, so I stuck with Android. I looked at self-enrollment of BYOD devices. I took a look at deploying pre-existing software packages that are publicly available and some basic device managing policies. To get started with Intune, they make it really easy. There's a 30-day free trial that you can use to spin up an environment, play around with, test. I also had a free trial for Azure AD Premium, which helped me with Windows Automatic Enrollment, which we'll look at. And I connected it to my benjamindevries.me domain that I started in lab a while back. That's completely optional. That's just so that I can create user accounts that have that domain. And it also just gave me more help with learning DNS records. First, of course, we have to create some users so that we can manage their devices. This is very similar to a local AD environment. It's just kind of cloudified, so you can see that cloud interface that we've seen elsewhere in the class. I created some generic users. Of course, they have characters from Schitt's Creek, one of my favorite shows. Then we enroll their devices. So for BYOD, it's very simple. Users can self-enroll their devices by logging into their accounts. And they do that through the Windows settings, Access Work or School menu, or the Intune company portal, which is available through iOS and Android or Mac OS. Once the devices are managed or enrolled, or even if they are not, if you want to do some MAM, you can deploy applications to those devices. So you can select Google Play apps, Windows Store apps, and Apple Store apps. They can be made available to your users for them to pick out from the company portal. You can also require certain apps so that when the device is enrolled, the app is automatically installed. And you can block certain apps so that if you don't want an app to be run alongside your data, if it's known for breaches or you're unsure of if it's secure or not, that might be a good thing to block. You can also configure and manage Microsoft 365, Microsoft Edge, as well as Microsoft Defender products on all of your devices. One other thing you can do that I did not get a chance to look in depth at is deploying in-house Windows apps. They just need to be compiled with an Intune configured installer, and then you can create a deployment package through that. So we can see here the company portal on both Android and Windows. Of course, we have Candy Crush here because what more could the professors want? When you're managing device policy, you create policy objects and assign them to devices and users. This is pretty much identical to what you would do with GPOs in Windows group policy, as we saw earlier in class. When you're doing BYOD, you only get access to basic policies such as security settings, minimum OS version, storage encryption, and password protection requirements. That makes sense because your devices are owned by your users, so you can't really manage stuff that they have control over, but you can set a baseline so that your data is protected by a baseline security. Enterprise configuration, which is a completely separate way to enroll the devices, would allow much more granular control. So if you wanted to manage your organization's devices through Intune, you would be able to do that as well and have deeper control over every single setting. And some of the outcomes of this project. I found that it was very easy to get started with Intune. There's a detailed quick start guides for a variety of topics. Pretty much any basic thing you could want, they'll help you get started with it. There's also a clean interface with helpful tips throughout, so I was constantly being greeted by guides to do certain things or walkthrough videos that help you set up certain features. And I think it's cool that the devices can be co-managed by Endpoint Manager. This can either be done indefinitely, so if you want certain functionality in Endpoint Manager and certain functionality in Intune, you can do that and work alongside each other. You can also deploy Intune as part of a cloud migration, so then you can gradually strip away functionality from Endpoint and add it into Intune, and you can migrate to the cloud that way. Some of the downsides I found was that changes did not happen instantly. This is kind of general with this sort of software, but I would make a change on the server side, and then you could go into the client and click refresh, but it wouldn't be there for another few hours or so. So that just had some difficulty testing if I deployed a policy or an application where I would have to check back the next morning to see if it worked. And there's also some redundancies between the management interfaces in Intune, Azure AD, and Microsoft 365. They all share the same backbone, but I found it to be a little bit confusing because you can manage users in multiple different places, you can manage devices in multiple different places, you can manage applications in multiple different places. So just something to keep in mind and read up on where you should be, where the easiest one is to do each functionality. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below and I'll take a look and get back to you. Thanks you.